The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Avivus webinar on digital transformation for waste and environmental services. My name is Bernie Simmons. I'm going to be your primary facilitator this morning. Although I'm not alone, I've got some assistance from a colleague of mine, Rachel Clinton. In terms of agenda, we'll deal with some of the details in a moment, but in terms of agenda and structure for this morning, we're going to run for about an hour. We've got quite a bit of material to get through. My undertaking to you all on the phone is that we won't run more than an hour, so that'll be the absolute maximum. So we'll have you on your way and able to get on with the rest of your Tuesday by 11 o'clock this morning. We've got quite a few people on the phone, so there are a few sort of rules of engagement, I suppose, if you like, which I'll get to in a minute, but a quick introduction and background, a brief overview of the platform structure, and then I'm going to give over the majority of the time we've got together this morning to provide you with a demonstration of waste and the associated modules. There's a number of modules on the platform, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, that kind of make up the waste solution, and we'll give you a kind of an overview and an insight and a dip into each of those as much as possible. We have got all the lines on mute this morning, but the reason for that is we've got a whole bunch of people on, and we're conscious that many of you work in open plan offices and have got multiple folks in the room, and sometimes it's difficult to control background noise and those sorts of things. So we mute everybody's lines automatically on the GoToWebinar service, but we don't want that to discourage you from asking questions. And the way that you ask questions, I'll explain in just a moment. So there is an opportunity for that. So here's a slide that just gives you the FAQs for this morning, the things that people most often ask. The first is the session is being recorded. The reason for that is so that we can share it with you afterwards. So if you like what you've seen this morning and you want to share it with colleagues internally, there'll be a recording available, which you or your colleagues can view on demand as and when you want to. Also, we will be using some slides, as you can see. So that's the first 10 or 15 minutes of the session, and they will also be shared in PDF format, so you can get hold of them and share those with colleagues if you want to. If you really like what you see and you want to take a closer look and you want us to come on site and visit with you and give you kind of a similar sort of workshop experience where we provide a demo and take questions and those sorts of things, we can do that. We can run either on site or we can run those in a similar format to this as an online meeting, but just privately for your organisation, for your local authority. But just get in touch with us to do that and we'll set something up for you. And to my earlier point in terms of how do you ask questions, I explained a moment ago that all the lines will be muted to reduce background noise. So please use the chat facility. So you'll all see a console when you log in that gives you some tools for interacting with the online meeting service. What I'd ask of you, though, is if you direct those questions to my colleague Rachel Clinton. Rachel's in the background today facilitating everything. And amongst other things, one of her roles is to deal with the questions that crop up. So if you use the chat facility by typing your question, direct it to Rachel. She will do her best to answer that question during the process of the webinar this morning. And if it's something that's a bit more involved or needs a more detailed or lengthy answer, then we might take that online and either Rachel or I will respond to you accordingly. But don't feel that you can't ask questions, but you just need to do that via the chat facility, please, folks, if you could do that. We have tried it where I kind of answer them in real time, but I get very distracted and generally trip myself up, so it's much better if Rachel takes care of that side of things. So there's some of the FAQs and kind of just housekeeping for this morning. Let's move on to, I suppose, the main event really, and talk briefly about some of the challenges that we see to waste and environmental services in terms of delivery and sustainability of those services from a local authority perspective. And we say this with, I suppose, some experience. Avivus as a business has been around for the last 11 years, actually. 2007 we set the business up. We deal these days exclusively with UK local authorities, so our entire customer base is made up pretty much of UK local authorities, both at the district and borough, unitary and one or two shire level. And as a result, I suppose, we've got a fair bit of, what I describe as kind of situational expertise in the work that that your organisations do on a day-to-day basis, because we spent a lot of time working with our customers, helping them solve problems and delivering digital transformation. And one of the things that's become very much sort of a focus area over the last, I suppose, 18, 24 months or so is a bit longer than that really, is the kind of waste and environmental services piece. And we've grown into that with our customers, and we've, I suppose, observed some particular challenges. One of the things that always strikes me when I'm talking to our customers and prospective customers is just how resource intensive the delivery of waste and environmental services in particular. You've got vehicles that require maintenance, that need to be safe to operate, that need to be effective and fit for purpose. You've got large numbers of staff. You've got customers that you count typically in the tens of thousands, sometimes in the hundreds of thousands, all of whom want their waste collected. So these are highly resource intensive processes. And I think they're processes that any organisation would struggle to deliver even if you are a dedicated waste collection organisation, which of course local authorities are, but you're a dedicated waste collection organisation in the context of a panoply of really literally hundreds of other services that you're providing for your local customers. So it's quite an impressive feat in many ways when you look at it, that local authorities manage to do these things as efficiently as they do. The other flip side of that, of course, is from a customer's point of view, that waste collection being prompt, efficient, on time, deemed to be appropriate, is a very emotive issue. It's one of the things that people care about a great deal, and they will be very vocal about it. So if their bins are not collected, or they're having issues with the way that they're presenting their rubbish, that's disrupting that service in some way from their perspective and in their view, they will not be shy about telling you about that. So there's lots of issues that can crop up and that do crop up on a day-to-day basis, and they form a high volume component of kind of inbound contact to local authorities. We know that for a fact. And I think sometimes the balance of those challenges, the resource intensity, the emotive issue of waste collection, how important that is to your customers, can sometimes make authorities a little bit risk averse about making significant changes to the way that they do things. And that can sometimes lead to a lack of innovation. So we've listed kind of sometimes a lack of innovation or lack of automation in the delivery of services, because there's risk associated with them, and you need to manage that risk carefully. And as a result, when you're delivering things through an analog or a digital channel, you need to make sure that you've got oversight and ability to understand what's going on. So the analytics and analysis of waste collection data and services is important. We'll talk and demonstrate more about that a bit later. So if I talk about My Council Services, which is the platform that we provide, and I'll just say at this point that this webinar is designed for anyone interested in waste and environmental services delivery through digital tools, really. But it caters to those amongst our audience this morning who are completely fresh to My Council Services as a product. So we've got some customers and a majority of prospects on the phone, those that don't yet work with us, and you're all very welcome. And I think there's plenty of material for everybody. But for those of you that are a little bit familiar with us, you might see some of the introduction that you're kind of already aware of, but I'll try to move through that fairly quickly. But nonetheless, I want to make sure that everybody has a firm grasp on where we sit and what we offer. And the slide on screen starts to attempt to demonstrate or describe some of that. So the My Council Services platform at large provides really an end-to-end digital platform for local authorities to use. And that is broken down into different modular components, if you like. So at the top of that stack, and those modular components pretty much map to the way that a contemporary local authority is organised. So at the top of the technology stack, you've got our self-service kind of CRM desk offerings. So the ability really to interact with customers through digital channels, be that email, app self-service, web self-service, telephone services. We can support all of those inbound channels from a customer and a local authority's perspective. And many of those are, of course, are highly relevant to waste. How does someone report a missed bin? How does someone look up their bin collection schedule? How does someone book a scheduled collection for a bulky item removal and pay for that potentially? So all of those things are crucial to digitising the end-to-end process for waste. So the self-service piece plays into that. Sitting behind that and alongside that is our back office feature and function, which constitutes a whole bunch, or is constituted of a whole bunch of modules, one of which is the waste module. But they speak to right across the array of local authority services, really. So the ability to do things not just at the first point of contact with the customer, but carry that through and manage that process, be it a scheduled collection, regular collection, whatever it might be. All of those things require processing through the back office. And then the final, well, not the final piece of the puzzle, but an additional piece of the puzzle that helps close the loop is what we call our mobile worker piece. And in terms of how that relates to waste, well, it relates to waste in multiple ways. It could be mobile working capability for individuals on a collection wagon for a regular domestic refuse collection round, or recycling collection round, or green garden waste round, or it could indeed be kind of more ad hoc services where someone books and pays for a bulky item uplift. But the ability to get that report in from a customer that they may have reported via the web out into the hands of someone that can deal with it as quickly as possible, so that the waste function within your organisation can operate as efficiently as possible. So the idea of kind of making the process end to end, and then as the final step alongside that, all of those processes supported by your colleagues in IT from an architecture and data accessibility point of view, but crucially making sure that you don't forget that you've got a customer at the centre of many of these processes, and it's probably quite important to keep that customer up to date. Send a confirmatory note when a missed bin has been reported, if indeed it is permissible as a missed bin report. Send a confirmatory note and an update when a bulky item collection team are going to be there, once the customer's paid their invoice. All these sorts of things that can be built in to automate the process and reduce the risk of what we would think about as demand failure, where someone might use a digital channel up here to book, pay, report, tell you about something, but they don't get sufficient updates in a timely fashion, and then the next thing they're doing is on the phone into the call centre, and you've got that demand failure concept occurring and clogging up the inbound line. So we're about trying to avoid that for the UK local authorities. So that's a little bit how the product maps at a high level to the contemporary local authority structure. I just want to drill down on that in a little bit more detail. And the first thing I'll do, I'll move through this pretty quickly because I don't want to get too bogged down here, but we offer a customer-facing piece which can either be presented as a My Account kind of enterprise approach where a customer identifies themselves and logs in, or indeed they can use individual e-forms that they can use as a guest, so on and so forth. You can have those set up for single sign-on, so you sign on once and have access maybe to data that exists in multiple systems, so maybe you want to link it into your Revs and Bends system on a non-kind of waste tip, for example. There's lots of ways that we can deploy both the e-forms, the web forms and the apps that we provide and the portal that we provide, and you can use it and mix and match it in any way that you like. If I then drop down into the modules and kind of the back office component in a bit more detail, the areas that we're going to be focusing on this morning are the waste management module, so that, everything is underpinned by that in terms of what you're about to see demo-wise. I'll also give you a quick tour, if we get time, of the sort of license and contracts piece. So the context there would be something around a green garden waste example. We're signing up for an annual contract, and this is really how we've approached the development of the product in the back office, is to say, well, there's lots of things that a local authority can and will want to do, and a whole bunch of those look like a sort of permit, license or contracts-based transaction. So green garden waste, if you charge for that in your local authority, is a good example of that. But so is the processing of a blue badge parking permit for people with a disability. And that's effectively a contract, 3-year annual contract on which a permit is issued so that someone can park in positions that make accessibility better. But so is an application for a skip or scaffold license. So we've built these kind of vertical modules that enable you to do lots of different things that have really variations on a theme. So license and contract is one of those. Another of those is our schedulings, bookings and appointments component. So think about something like a bulky item collection. If that's a paid for service in your district, borough, unitary area, then you're going to allow people to book that, schedule it in, pay for it, and so there's a bookings example. But that same bookings engine, or a derivation of that bookings engine, can also be used for booking sports pitches, for booking an appointment with a revenues and benefits advisor, or anything else that you might create as a process and want to deploy digitally that is effectively a booking or an appointments process. So we try to create these things and they can be implemented once and then used across multiple service areas. We're going to be talking about those this morning in the context of waste. So that's the kind of back office piece. And then, as I mentioned a moment ago, we offer a full suite of mobile working capability, both kind of handheld devices and in-cab devices. And I'll try and give you a sort of taste for that this morning in terms of how do you get a request for a waste-related service into the hands of the crew member, the staff member that can deal with that in the most efficient way, be that on a large, regular refuse collection round or something that's a bit more ad hoc. And I'll try and show you a couple of examples of those. So just to kind of speak to the waste piece in a bit more detail, we enable the entire waste process, and I'll just build this slide up for you and talk you through it. So it starts with something like fairly simple, like, if I'm a customer and I want to know, I can't remember, when my bin collection schedules is. I think, most of us, certainly for my own part, I tend to look out my window on any given morning and see if anyone else has got their bin out, and if they have, then I'll probably drag mine out as well. I haven't got necessarily all of those details memorised, but an easy way to look those details up is quite helpful. So we offer a Know My Bin Day facility. Once waste data is loaded onto our platform, you can deploy that in lots of different ways, and that would be an integrated part of your app or eForms or in your .gov.uk site for your local authority. So Know My Bin Day is where it starts. The ability to enable what we would call kind of contracted waste services that I've mentioned. So that might be, sharps and clinical waste, green garden waste, so on and so forth, things that people sign up to and require either as a special service or as a paid-for service. Of course, at the core of all waste collection activity really is what we would call kind of scheduled waste, and we offer a process for enabling that. I'll show you some of that in a moment, and that would include things like enhanced missed bin reporting automation. So you can set conditions and rules about the way that you can report a missed bin effectively. And then, of course, things like ad hoc waste services. So, the bulky item collection that I've mentioned a few times already. How do you book those in? And all of those kind of play into and confluence into the kind of the waste service and the waste solution that we provide. On the left-hand side of the diagram, we also now offer route optimization, route and round optimization, and in-cab technology. And I'll be showing you an example of that as we move through this morning. So I promised about 10 or 15 minutes on slides. I'm about on schedule. So what we'll do at this stage is jump across to some software and a browser interface, and I'll start to give you a bit of a demonstration in terms of what some of these capabilities are, and we'll see how much we can fit in. So we jump out of the slides. I'll get rid of my scribbles on those slides. I don't know how helpful they've been, but hopefully breathe a bit of life into the platform and give you a sense for what it's all about. So I'm going to go to a login dialog box first off, and just going to remember some credentials, or try to. And that will take us into our sort of first view of My Council Services as a product, as a piece of software, as a piece of browser-based software. And I should mention at this point that the software is entirely browser-based. It's entirely cloud-hosted. So when customers are implementing this, you're not installing it on servers in your own infrastructure. You're not installing software on PC. So it's entirely contemporary, entirely cloud-based in that regard. I'll give you a quick tour of the screen real estate. Left-hand sidebar, so over here where I'm hovering with my mouse at the minute, you've got a configurable drop-down where you can set up any number of features and functions. So if I click into report it, for example, that will take me into a set of nested forms that include things like missed bin, fly tip reporting, graffiti, whatever it might be. If I go to something like apply for it, I've got examples like green garden waste in here. So I'm applying for a contract to have my green garden waste collected over an annual term. And if I look into something like book it, and I'll show you some of these in a bit more detail in a moment, then I've got things like booking a bulky item collection. So you can configure as many forms as you want under each of those nested options. You can configure those forms any way that you want. You can configure the options on the list in any way that you want. That's the left-hand sidebar. In the center of the screen, you've got hotspots, and they just wobble about and jump around as I hover over them. Again, these are completely configurable, so you can link these to perhaps your most commonly used forms, for example, where you want to present stuff front and center to customers. And then on the right-hand side, we've got various hooks into other sorts of information. So top right-hand side, you've got the number of service requests for this particular customer. I am logged in as a particular registered customer. The other thing I just want to reiterate is you don't have to present the forms and the digital transactional capability in the form of those e-forms as a portal in the way that we're looking at it. You can present them as individual e-forms. And indeed, the other point to make at this stage is to say that we're looking at a generic kind of non-branded version of the My Council Services interface in this example. When we deliver this for you as a customer, as a local authority, that's fully branded, an integral part of your website. You're not going to different URLs, or customers are not going to different URLs. You can make it all run from within your own web domain, your web property. So we're working as a registered customer here, a chap called Gary Wilcox, fictitious resident of the London Borough of Redbridge. More about Gary and his activities in a minute. But back to the right-hand sidebar, you can, as a registered customer, you can see all of your historical transactions and activities, number of service requests, draft service requests. I've got semi-completed forms, bookings I've got in place, contracts I might have in place, anything that's associated with the customer. Again, all fully configurable. As I drop down that list, there are other options, and we're actually running more of a kind of CRM and self-service focused webinar this afternoon. I'll be showing some of these examples later this afternoon if anyone's booked on for that session as well. But I'll keep my powder dry for that piece. So what we'll do first off is let's just start to do some transactions. So the first thing I want to do is I want to look up my bin collection schedule. So we'll start with sort of most straightforward, and we'll do stuff that's a bit more sophisticated, if you like. If I click on Know My Bin Day, that presents me with a very simple search box in which I can type in a postcode or an address or a partial address. So I'm going to type in a Redbridge postcode, G182HZ. I'm going to look at a particular property, so I'll put in the road name, and that brings it up. It matches those two, effectively the most crucial components of any postal address in the UK, and it matches that back to 78 Grove Hill in Redbridge. On that note, folks, just important to say that what we carry on the platform to assist with address management is a full version of NLPG, National Land and Property Gathers here. So the manifestation of the UK address base database. So that will sync and map directly to your own organisation-specific LLPG, Local Land and Property Gazetteer, in terms of matching UPRNs and grid references and so on and so forth. So if I select that address, what that does immediately is you go and reference the refuse collection detail for 78 Grove Hill, and it presents back, in this case, Gary's home address that says you've got a garden collection on the 5th of July coming up, and you've got a domestic collection on the 8th of July coming up, and they're both on a 7-day cycle. If Gary wants to look in more detail at that, he can go into Show Calendar, and it will show him a monthly and annual calendar of what's going on and when he can expect his collections. And that will include things like exception days, any changes. It could also display any scheduled collections in terms of bulky item or whatever it might be that you might have signed up with, or if he's a business or runs a business on his premises and he's got a trade waste collection, all of those things can be presented as part of the calendar. So the idea is that you're using My Council Services as your core platform for your waste data, and that allows you to push that data out into multiple different directions for customers and for, of course, waste services staff to use in going about their business and executing their duties. So there's a little bit about the first level. How do you start to use that data? So that's the Know My Bin Day lookup. Gary, as a customer, then wants to go on and report, let's say, a missed bin collection. So he might not want to navigate it. He might not be sure where that form is. But if he types in the words missed, the whole platform is indexed for search in that regard. So I can type in missed, and it pops up a knowledge base article about why my bin might not have been collected that I can go and look at if I wish. Or in this case, I'm going to go straight to a form, and it should load us with our first e-form of the morning. So we're on a missed bin collection. We're looking at our first My Council Services e-form. Just a couple of kind of anatomical items to point out to you so you kind of know where we're at. You've got a breadcrumb trail at the top of the screen. So this is a fairly simple form of a 3-step process. If I then bring your attention down to kind of the main body of the form, we've got some information that we've configured about refuse collections and rules around those in the borough. And this is just an example. This is not based on fact from any particular council. It's just examples for demo purposes. And then at the bottom, we've got the ability to allow the customer to select which bins have been missed. So I'm going to click on select, and we then get a search address, again, as we did with the Know My Bin Day. I'm going to put a different address in this time, something with some more detail around it and a bit slightly richer data. So we'll go E182HZ again, but I'm going to look at number 56 this time. We'll put in a different address, let it match back to 56, and that will pull back then all the refuse collection data that is referenced against that property. So we're deliberately gilding the lily here a little bit from a demonstration point of view, because we've got a whole bunch of refuse collection services against this particular property, more than would be normal for a residential address. But the reason we've done that is just to sort of demonstrate the point a little bit. So listed here are all of the recent refuse collection services that are registered against 56 Grove Hill. That includes domestic collections, garden waste collections, trade collections over the last couple of weeks. And you can choose how far back you want to allow a customer to view those in terms of reporting missed bins. But crucially, when you think about that kind of permissibility of reporting a missed bin, what we're also able to do is to set up a bunch of rules that say, well, dependent on the date of collection, we've got certain rules about how long you're allowed to leave it before you report a missed bin. So if there was a domestic collection on the 24th of June, and we've got a rule up here that says a customer cannot report a missed bin any time after 8 days. Again, this is just configured as an example, so it pops up that message, and it means that, try as Gary might, he cannot click and select that as a missed bin report. So we're governing and controlling through the use of automated rules the ability to allow missed bin reporting. We don't want to stop people if it's a bona fide example. So there was a collection on the 26th that was within that the timeline rule. And if Gary wanted to, he could select on that and continue, and then create a service request that would be submitted into the database that would allow for a missed bin collection. And you can configure those rules to be as sophisticated or as tightly controlled as you wish. So if I select that example, it will create a missed bin collection. We then click on next, and then we just click on submit, and we allow Gary to submit that. And it can then drop into the automated workflow about assignment. It can use mobile working then to push that out to the missed bin collection crew, or however you want to do that. But the idea is, within 2 or 3 clicks, the customer can look, they can be governed in terms of what they can and can't do, and they can create a service request where it's permissible to do so. And that's all driven through configuration in the back office, which we'll get to a little bit later in the session this morning. So there's example number 2. We've leveraged the refuse collection data that resides on the platform to look up bin collections, schedules for a customer, and also then to report a missed bin in an automated way with the appropriate governance wrapped around that to control what folks are and are not allowed to do. The other thing we might want to do is maybe book something. So we'll use an example of booking something at this stage. So I'm going to go for a bulky item collection, is the example I'm going to use. So let that form load, and you'll start to see sort of variation of a theme now from an e-form perspective start to appear. You've got your breadcrumb trail across the top, slightly more involved process, details, evidence, payment, confirmation. So we've got a 5-step process in this example. We're on step 1, moving into 2 on that. A little bit of information again about the bulky item collection service as we offer it in this fictitious borough. And then we've got an option to use the bookings plugin effectively. So if I click on select, that will pull through the waste bookings plugin. That's another module that sits on the My Council Services platform. This time we've pre-populated Gary's home address at 78 Grove Hill. That's the address that Gary, my pretend customer, is registered at. So it's a bulky item collection. There's obviously, in this example, we've scheduled these to be collected in certain areas of the borough on certain days. So we're using that intelligence that's built into the refuse collection round data that's been created, only to present those days to the customer that's trying to book, that's pertinent to the collection day in the area in which their property resides. So we're only presenting, in this example, these are Mondays. So the refuse collection for the area that Gary lives in, that his house is situated in, is only on a Monday. You only book a bulky item collection on a Monday, therefore we're only presenting him with Monday dates. So if we select a date and we then click select, then it will feed back that information and should, within a second or two, present me with options that are available in terms of open slots that are available on the 15th of July. So if Gary then selects that, so he says, yes, I'll go for that, I'm around, or someone can be around on the 15th of July. Collections only happen between 9:30 and 4:30, so they're not in specified times in this example. And this is what we call a weighted collections example. So it only it effectively charges for items per item based on the kind of size and weight of those items. So if I click on electrical appliance and we say that's a computer or printer, that's got a weighting of 1. If I add an item and say, well, okay, this is the next one is a piece of furniture, we'll make it a, what should we make it? I'm trying to find something this one. I don't know what the weightings are actually, so we'll try a bed base. That's also got a weighting of 1. But if you've got bulkier items, you can build them up and you might charge differently for them. In this example, we charge £6 per item up to a maximum of 6 items. But again, the point here is this is entirely configurable. So you can set it up in any way that you want. So if you want to do a weighted system in the example that we're using here, or you've got a different approach, or it's just a flat fee for up to 3 items, or whatever it might be, you can use the waste bookings engine to configure that in any way that you like. So once we're happy with that, we click on select, and it will write that transaction back into the broader eForm. So it's using the waste bookings plugin to enable the customer to select and then ultimately to pay for. The next step then is evidence. So if I click on evidence, that allows me then to upload a picture. So if I go and add a file, you may or may not want to do this, but we're just kind of giving you some examples of the art of the possible, I suppose. I've got some computer parts of the photo there. You can control the number and size of attachments that you allow and the file extensions that are permissible from a governance and security point of view. In this example, this is a paid for service. So the next step in the process then is to is to interface with our payment gateway piece. So this is our first point of integration, really, in terms of using a third-party system into which My Council Service is integrated. And in this example, we're using a payment gateway, a third-party payment gateway. We've done lots of integrations. We're using the Barclaycard payment gateway here, just as an example. We've done integrations into Capita, into Civica, into WorldPay, into Iridium, into Barclays, you name them, we've probably done them. So if I click on Barclaycard here, it will then interface me in that regard. It's picking up the order reference, the total charge, which are those 2 items at £6 an item. Both of those items had a weighting of 1, so no uplift in price in that regard. And then the beneficiary code, or the beneficiary account name. And then from there on in, you've done the seamless handshake with the payment gateway piece. So you're just into online retail territory at this stage, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So I put in Gary's card details. And expiry date. Fictitious card verification code, confirm my payment, and let it do its thing. So then, we're not doing any of the kind of payment card industry compliant piece. We're handing that information securely over to your payment gateway provider and merchant services provider, letting them do the transaction, and they are handing a result back to My Council Services. So that's a two-way integration, enabling a seamless payment service for the customer, so that they can, having booked, they can then pay for in advance their service collection. And the same principle would apply to something like trade waste or any other kind of paid for subscribed service, with payment up front, of course. Then with the payment successful, we then click on next. That then gives Gary, as the customer that's booking this, the ability to review everything and make sure that everything is in order. And then all he has to do is click on submit. And there we go. So there's a few examples of how a customer can use the My Council Services e-forms, or indeed in this context, the My Account portal capability, to do a whole bunch of different things, transactional items that would typically, back in recent history, have been an inbound call into the call centre, which would have used more resources and probably taken longer and been more difficult to manage. So you're kind of trying to automate all of those high volume but crucially important processes. So what we'll do at the next stage then is just jump across to our back office environment and take a look at what these things look like in the back office briefly, before we then go to take a look at some details on a handheld device. So that's the plan anyway. So just to be absolutely clear about what we're doing, everything we've been looking at so far, folks, so all of this interface is things that a customer would see. What we're going to look at now is everything that really a trusted member of your staff would see. So we're going from customer facing to back office facing at this point. So I'll just jump across back to the other browser interface. Again, everything is still browser based, it's fully cloud based, nothing installed on the PC. And I should probably also say at this stage, I'm running live on a live demonstration instance. So what you're seeing is kind of live performance effectively. So there's no smoke and mirrors going on in terms of how this is rigged up as a demo environment. So if I just log in under my own profile, and then click login, hopefully I've got the login details correct. We'll go through to our demo instance. So we're looking at sandbox offline non-production instances this morning. This is the demo instance that we use. And what you can see first off is we've dropped into an interface called Service Desk. The Service Desk is really the kind of interface that you would probably use if you were responsible for managing / administering a service area specific function. So you can slice and dice the view that you get based on your user profile and your user privilege, what you're allowed to see and what you're not allowed to see. And it's worth noting at that point that everything on the platform is governed by what we call role-based access control. What we mean by role-based access control is that every user has a profile attached to them, both a customer and a member of staff, and that role-based access control profile governs what they can see in terms of functionality, what they can do and how they can do it, but crucially it also governs what data they can see. So if you're working in waste and environmental services, you don't see social care data, for example. So all of that is locked down and it can be locked down at a very, very detailed level. So we can see at the top of that list in Service Desk, you get a kind of a tabular view of what's going on. We can see Gary's been a busy chap in terms of reporting issues, but a few things have happened that are of interest. So at the top of that list at 10:32 today, so just a couple of minutes ago, we had a special collection report request from Gary. 5 minutes or 7 minutes prior to that, we had a missed bin collection report from Gary. So you can see all of those reports that were created by Gary a few moments ago are now visible to us in the back office. No one's touched them, no one's had to get on the phone, paper's been filled in. It's just an entirely digital process. So if I drop into that in a bit more detail in a moment, we'll start to take a look at some of the specifics inside that particular service request. But there's one other area I want to just draw your attention to, which is this owner column over here. So there's a couple of things happened there, in that the report that Gary created, the request for a special collection, has been created in the database, and that's now visible to me in Service Desk. And also an automated rule has triggered to say, well, if it's a service request of this nature, then assign it to this team. So that's using a very simple set of logical criteria that says, if bulky item request and it's been paid for, then assign it out to Bernie. But it could be much more sophisticated than that. It could be assigning out to the appropriate depot based on the location, assigning out to the appropriate team based on shift patterns, assigning out to the appropriate team based on shift patterns and the number of open jobs they've got on their digital task sheet at the moment. So all of these things can be configured into the platform to automate and add sophistication to your digital workflow. So Gary's reported it through a self-service channel, and then the rules engine has kicked in to say, assign it out to Bernie, and do some other stuff with it so that we can deal with it and get it assigned and dealt with. So if I just drop back into that, we'll take a look at that in slightly more detail. And that will drop us back into the rows of information around this particular transaction. So we can see all of it. You can see on this service request there's an electrical appliance to be collected, there's a furniture bed base to be collected. Gary's payment of £12 has been made and accepted, so we know it's good to go. We can see a picture of some of those items. We can see the location, and then crucially, the automated rules engine is triggered in at this point and said you want to create both assignment of the service request, so the entire body of data that's been assigned out to me as a mobile worker, but also create a work order, a particular task against that that's also assigned to Bernie. So there's two things that happen in the background. The report has been received in through a self-service channel. We've looked at it in inverted commas through the eyes of the digital engine and said, okay, it's got these characteristics, do these two things with it. It's a special item, bulky item collection, assign it to Bernie, create a task for Bernie as well, and just get that dealt with. If I then scroll down a bit further, then you'll see the audit trail effectively of what's been happening. So the service request was submitted by Gary under his email address at a particular date and time. An initial status was created, a special collection task was created, an email was sent back to the customer then to let them know that we got it. So back to that kind of demand failure point and keeping the customer up to date, that's been dealt with. The ownership of the service request was changed to Bernie Simmons. Updating of the task was always done, and then an additional task added. So lots of things have happened automatically, and they've all been captured in the audit trail of the service request. So that, should there be an issue with that, you can always go back and forensically examine exactly what has been done and what's been done by whom in the authority or elsewhere. So you've got good governance over the kind of digital audit trail of what's going on. In terms of what else you can do within Service Desk, well, there's lots you can do. If you needed to, you could link this to another service request. You could create a document off the back of it. You could add a note. You could have an interaction with the customer. You could create an additional task. So although we're using an automated process in terms of service request assignment, task creation, you can also do all those things manually. So you can also update the owner, change the status, change the priority. You've got a great deal of flexibility in terms of how you can manage things and effectively how you can case manage through what we call Service Desk. So I won't go through all of those options, but there's an awful lot there, and happy to take any questions on that as a follow-up if you'd like to. So that's a little bit of an introduction to Service Desk. What we'll do next, folks, is just jump across, if I can, to the digital device. So I have to rely on a piece of third-party technology to allow this to happen. So I'm going to see if this works. Should do. Just waiting on that to fire up. If I can connect. We've heard that little noise. That means that TeamViewer, for the time being at least, is working, which is good. So we've got what you're looking at there is an image of a mirrored image of my Android tablet. It's an Android S5. It's a totally bog standard generic tablet. You can't see this, but I've actually got it in a rugged case, so it's kind of suitable for tough operating environments and conditions. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you to the native mobile application element of My Council Services. So you may be able to see on screen, I've got an NCS demo example here. And if I tap on that, it will open the app up. And the app effectively, this is again in generic format, so it's unbranded. When we deliver this to customers, it's fully branded. But you've effectively got the full portal available as an app. So if a customer is more comfortable working on a tablet as opposed to working on a computer or PC, or don't have access to a PC, then you can they can download the app, and or alternatively they can access it via the browser on a tablet or a smartphone. So the platform is completely multi-channel and behaves nicely in all formats. But you've got things like Know My Bin Day, for example. I'm logged in under my own profile here, so I've also got things like Mobile Worker, Lone Worker, Mobile Manager, so on and so forth. But I've also got access to all of those report it forms. If I tap on report it, I can go, and if I'm out and about and I've got my tablet or my smartphone about my person and I want to create a service request for the council to see, I could do that from here. So all of the functionality that is available via the browser-based interface that can be accessed via a PC or a tablet can also be accessed via a fully synchronized portal. So the customer can have channel of choice effectively in that regard. But what I wanted to do in this example was just draw your attention, because we're talking about waste and environmental services, is just to draw your attention to the icon here, Mobile Worker. So on the right-hand column of the icons on the app, you can see the Mobile Worker icon. And if I tap on that and allow that to sync, it will just resync that. What it should do, as it does that, is pull down any new digital data that's been assigned to me in terms of my tasks and activities for the day. So to do that, I do need to have a signal. So to refresh my task list, I need to have a signal. But once I've got that data downloaded, I can disappear into the proverbial tunnel, stairwell, lead dustbin, whatever it might be, lose my signal, and I can still access all of that data. And you'll notice while I was doing that, you'll see at the top of the screen there is a new service request created on the 2nd of July at 10:32, which indeed is Gary's special collection request. And I can cycle through all of that information, the location of the address, any other information that's relevant, any notes that may have been added in the back office, the photographs that Gary uploaded in terms of what I'm collecting, the fact that the payment has been made and that this is good for collection. So I've got a service request now that a moment ago was being created by the customer themselves through the portal, and then was available in the back office via the service desk interface. And now we're looking at that on a mobile device, and we're able to see that and deal with it and interact with it. So that's the service request at large. If I tap in the top left-hand corner of the screen, where you see the 3 stacked bars in the top left-hand corner up here, I can also look, as well as service requests, I can look at particular tasks. So again, we saw in the back office that My Council Services was creating both ownership of the service request at large, but also creating a separate associated task that was assigned to me. Again, you can see it's the real one. It's the 2nd of July at 10:32, and I've got a task that I can then go in and view, so that you can have multiple tiers of data, both service requests and tasks, that can be managed in tandem and separately, so that you can really kind of build up sophisticated workflow. So if I then want to go and update that in some way, let's say I've gone there and I've collected it, and it requires a customer signature, for example. So if I update the status and I say I'm going to put that to closed, then it will say, well, please sign off sign off this task to close it off properly. So that's capturing a customer signature effectively. So if I click on OK, that takes me to a digital signature template. So I can put a signature on here. So I'll write my name, and we'll go 10:44 on the 2nd of the 7th, 2019. And I'm going to click on save, and that's the digital signature effectively saved back to the device. If I then want to sync that to the back office, I just need to swipe the screen. So I do need a signal to update data, but the point I was making earlier is that you can, when you've got data down on the tablet, you can work completely offline. You only need to sync, then it will be saved locally, encrypted, so that data is secure, and it will be saved until such time as you're able to sync again. So one of the benefits of the native mobile application from a mobile working point of view is the fact that you can work both online and offline, true offline capability. So we'll go back and take a look at some of that in a moment. But before we do that, while we're on the device, I want to show you one other interface. I'm actually going to go to a different version of the app to show you this piece, but I just want to give you a little taster as part of the sort of waste and environmental services walkthrough of what this looks like from a in-cab capability. So I'm going to use a different version of the app down here. I'll just tap on that and open it up. This is running against our development environment, but I just want to show you what it looks like when you're dealing not with ad hoc tasks that are assigned, but when you've got a scheduled set of collections for a regular curbside domestic collection, for example. So in this example, I'm going to click on the icon 3 down on the left-hand side, which is marked waste, and then I'm going to start the process by going and retrieving some waste data. So if I go get waste data, I have to select particular examples. So we're using some test data here. So we'll select domestic waste. We'll select a round number, and I just need to make sure I select the right one, which is this one here, on a particular date. So this is effectively something that a member of the crew might do at the start of their round, perhaps having used a mobile device and the app to create a pre-round safety inspection on the vehicle. You then go and retrieve your waste data for the day. I'm actually using a bit of historical data here just for the demonstration. Click on OK. Once I've set the criteria for waste data retrieval, I then click on Go, and the app will go away and say, okay, these are the criteria I'm looking for domestic waste collection. This is the particular round number, and then it will retrieve that full round information. So we've got quite a lot of data on there. Retrieve that pretty quickly. This is effectively the waste worker interface. So the next obvious step you might want to be able to show, and it is the ability to, how do you give turn-by-turn directions as an in-cab device so that you can effectively equip a refuse wagon with all of the information that they need to go and complete their round successfully. And to do that, having downloaded the round data, all they would need to do is click on the map view, and that would automatically reorientate the screen. It will then go and calculate the route. You can see we're using some test waste data from one of our customers here as an example, and it's calculating the route. Also reveals where I am today, which I'm actually working from my home office, which is over on the East Coast. Just lost my location there temporarily, but if I tap, that brings me back on screen. Now, if I just zoom you out a little bit, it's actually calculating that route all the way down to South Wales from my home office, which is out in East Anglia, which is slightly farcical, I realise, but it does give you the sort of idea of what this is doing. So this is using turn-by-turn sat-nav capability with all of the vehicle contingencies and road information contingencies built into that process to optimise the route all the way down to South Wales, where we've got some more detailed round collection data. So I won't fiddle around too long. I'll show you a recorded demo of this in a moment so you kind of get a sense of what that looks like in action. And we'll jump back to the slides to do that. But you can see as I zoom in, so we're getting to ever greater levels of detail around that round collection data that hopefully you can start to see up here on screen. So you've got all of the different collection waypoints, and as you drive past those, it will record those on screen and scroll through. You can flag things as contaminated or whatever they might be. So if we're at a particular collection point and it's at flat 8 and we want to tap on that, then and it's too heavy, been contaminated in some way, then if you want to set it up to allow that to happen, you can do that. So you can do all sorts of things with that round collection data. So there's a couple of things that I showed you there that really got to extend out towards the far end of the waste process, right into in-cab devices and handheld devices for either regular scheduled collections or ad hoc collections. So what we'll do at that stage, I'm going to jump back to the slides. I'm going to try and bring things to an orderly conclusion for you in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. But I just want to show you, before I do that, what that round collection in-cab device capability looks like when it's actually running in action. I've got a little video prepared to help you do that. So if I click on play, you'll see we're looking at exactly the same interface as we were looking to go live on the tablet device a moment ago. But if I just click on play, you've got a number of things going on. You can see the vehicle. This is not in real time. That would be a refuse wagon bombing along at about 60 miles an hour. This is about 3 times speeded up. But it's going around and completing in accordance with the turn-by-turn sat navigation instructions on the optimized route. And as it does that, those waypoints are turning grey and they're being automatically flagged as visited or unvisited or marked as contaminated or whatever it might be. I'll just let that play through so you can get a sense of what that looks like in terms of providing in-cab capability of an optimized route for a full-on domestic collection. And that should just come to a conclusion in the next few seconds or so while that route is finished off. And it gives the crew in the cab the ability to mark any of those as contaminated or not available or whatever it might be. And in addition, that data can then be triggered directly back to the service centre, so that should a customer say, hey, my bin's been missed, and bad actually was marked as contaminated, so you could close that off, and when the customer goes to try and report a missed bin, it won't allow them to do so. So that's a quick potted introduction to what the thing looks like from end to end, right from a customer doing something via an e-form or via a logged in My Account portal, through to managing in the back office, through to deploying that in an ad hoc way to a handheld device, or indeed to an in-cab device that's suitable for working through the waste collection activities and data. So let me just move on from there. I'm just going to jump back before I just go into a bit more detail around that. I just want to jump back to the back office interface and show you a couple of other bits and pieces. What I really wanted to do was just touch on a few bits and bobs. You've got under the waste tab a full console that gives you access to looking up and reporting on any particular collection type or across any collection round. So effectively to produce reports against that data, be that live data or be that historical data. So the waste console gives you that. And then if I jump across the administration screens, then what you've got here is really all of the kind of configuration settings that allow you to build your kind of waste profile and your waste activities from the ground up. So if I scroll down, we've got a separate waste tab here that allows you to create collection types, then actually configure different collection types. So if I click on the plus sign there, it will allow me to configure a particular collection type and add details to that to create exception days, to upload round data. So under the waste tab, you've got all of the settings that allow you to configure all of the components around that waste data, as well as uploading that existing core waste data if you've got that in digital format. But just draw your attention over to the bookings and appointments piece. You'll notice the waste items there, so that's bookable waste items. So that was the component that was running in the background when we were doing the scheduled bulky item collection and paying for that as from under Gary's profile. So that's waste items. I'm not going to go into huge detail on this in any more detail today because we'd literally be here for another hour or two if I went through every option. But the point is that the platform is engineered to allow you to do as much configuration yourself so that you can kind of really own the solution. Of course, you're fully supported from our point of view in terms of getting you set up and running and supported on a day-to-day basis. But if you want to make changes to those things, once you know how to work with the platform, you can go ahead and do that. So that's a very quick tour through some of the back office components. I'm just conscious of time. We're coming up to the hour, so I'm just going to jump back to the slides. I just want to spend a couple of minutes just kind of summarising things and bringing everything to an orderly close. We showed you, albeit in microcosm, the kind of end-to-end waste processes from customers doing something right through to kind of route optimization. And I just wanted to talk to you for 30 seconds or so about that whole kind of route optimization process. So route optimization is actually a computationally very expensive exercise. It's quite a specialist thing to do, and we've been working on it a while to be able to deploy it in the way that I've showed it to you this morning. But it's looking at multiple things in terms of your waste data. So I'll just bring my pointer back up. But it's looking at the spatial relationship between many collection points, and you can see that as an example here. So it's doing lots of spatial calculations between the depot, or where a vehicle is now, and where it should go next in terms of doing that optimized route. Or if indeed it's around, it would be an optimized route from depot back to depot. What's the most efficient way of doing that? So the example of that calculation is on the left-hand side. That looks like a 10-year-old scribble. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the kind of the end-to-end. So from farthest to nearest in terms of a route optimization as opposed to a round optimization. So it's doing all of those calculations. It's also taking into account vehicle characteristics. So the back office components allow you to put in things like vehicle heights, vehicle dimensions, speed governance, all these sorts of things, fuel efficiency. So all of those factors can be taken into consideration in terms of the round optimization capability. It will also take into consideration physical constraints of the road infrastructure. So that's low clearance, going past a school where you're only allowed to go past there during, when it's not a start time or finish time, or you're not allowed to drive in excess of 50 miles an hour. All of those factors can be taken in terms of the route planning, and indeed notifications can be given to the driver if the device is in use. And we can also layer in real-time traffic information if you want to do that, so you can have dynamic changes to route as you go through the process. So there's a lot going on in that route optimization piece, and what we're trying to do is sort of surface that for the user in the cab potentially, so that they can use that in the way that we would all use our sat-navs on a day-to-day basis, but taking in all of those factors into account. And then just to kind of sort of finish up in terms of functionality, we've showed you the kind of from start to finish. So the ability to look up round collection data as a customer, the ability to make reservations for bulky item collection or sign up for a Green Garden waste account, whatever it might be. We've looked at the in-cab calculation, and I've referenced some of the reporting capabilities. The screenshot here is actually an example of some live reporting. So around in process that someone in the back office can review and see how many are open, how many collected, how many are contaminated, how many are not present. So you can get live reporting, of course, which supports the broader waste process. If you're working with another external waste provider and they've got their own system, then we can integrate into those. So if you don't want to use us end-to-end, that can be done. And we can integrate into lots of other systems as well. We've done lots and lots of system-to-system integrations. They're a feature of many of our implementations for our customers. And then finally, just to bring everything to an orderly conclusion for this morning and to allow you to get on your way by 11 o'clock, just a few words to us, really, based on our experiences. My council services can be implemented incrementally, so you don't have to have the full end-to-end process set up from day one. You can start and develop a business case around just the customer-facing side, or just the mobile working side, or just the in-cab side, or whatever it might be. There's lots of ways of approaching the problem and effectively, for want of a better metaphor, eating the elephant in more than one sitting. So you don't have to do these things all in one go. And oftentimes that's quite a good approach. Starting with some tactical wins and plan for the mid to longer term strategic goals, but making sure you're picking up efficiency gains and you're knocking over objectives as you go. So I plan for the long term, but operate in a fairly tactical way to start with in sort of phases of deployment is often a good way to go. You don't have to do it that way, but it's often a way that enables a project to be managed very effectively. My council service is generally open in its stance. It's not open source, it's a commercial product, but we're open in terms of our ability to integrate with third-party applications and other tools and technologies that you might be using in the council. And then I suppose to sort of countenance all of that and sort of balance my enthusiasm and our enthusiasm for my council services and digital transformation enabled by technology, I think it's sensible for us to say that technology is really only part of the solution. If you're going to make changes to these kind of resource-intensive and complex services like waste services, then you need to make sure you're educating both your customer services staff and your waste staff in terms of what's going to happen. You need to engage them in the process so that you've got buy-in from your internal customers in terms of your service area, and also to make sure that you're educating your customers in the changes that you're making, and also seize the opportunity to simplify and redesign processes. There's a lot of things that may have happened historically that are there by historical accident. There's often a great opportunity to kind of strip out overly complex and overly engineered processes and deliver something that's more streamlined and more straightforward and much more efficient. So there's I suppose, sort of a few words of advice from our own battle scars. We've done lots of these sorts of projects and learned lessons along the way. And then finally, it just remains for me to say thank you very much indeed for joining today's webinar. I know that's been a bit of a white knuckle ride through the kind of end-to-end waste process. We've crammed quite a lot into our 59 minutes. Slides will be available for download. A recording of today's session will be available, and also feel free to contact us with any follow-up questions, or if indeed you'd like to arrange a separate session for you and your colleagues, we'd be happy to do that. And thanks once again, and have a productive Tuesday. Thank you very much, folks. Bye-bye.